Hello everyone, this is Hedy. In this video, I'm going to do a summation of my final infographic after analyzing and thinking about how to do an infographic, and I will introduce the skills I learned in class, which I applied to this work. The right infographic is my final work. My topic is about Iron Man. He is a fictional character in Marvel Universe. First of all, it is necessary to introduce 5 visual potentials, for which bring us the opportunities to create infographics and communicate information successfully. Here are the 5 of them. The first one is appearance, relationship, numbers, location, and the time. Firstly, let's talk about the appearance. This display that used to help associate a topic with its information visually. People always ask questions like, what does it look like? Or what is the infographic about? And this will be the answer. The display conveyed with an infographic element that viewers will recognize. For my appearance display, I put an Iron Man image in grayscale here. It is really eye-catching due to its special color, especially comparing with other elements on this display. There is a giant purple box at the top, with Tony Stark, his name inside. There are also 3 icons related to him. The left one is the icon of Iron Man, the big A is the icon of Avengers, and the red Marvel, definitely it's the Marvel icon. All of the 3 elements are trying to tell where does he come from and where does he belong to. Next, I'm going to talk about the relationship. This display visually shows the relationship between 2 or more entities. For my display, I'm trying to show the change of Iron Man's appearance in different generations and movies. The year label and the arrows are showing the orientation of this change. There are 2 ways of evolution. The first one is a Hulkbuster at the top, and the other one is a normal armor at the bottom. The audience will see the evolution from beginning to the end. Then let's talk about the numbers. There are lots of ways to do the number display. For example, you can do the bar chart, the pie chart, or the line chart. The meaning of number display is to give the number significance. For example, you can show the change or the trend of the numbers. For my numbers, I have 2 displays. The first one is about the box offices of those movies which get Iron Man involved in. At the top part, there are 2 labels. The I stands for Iron Man, the A stands for Avengers. And inside the bar chart, there are 2 x-axes. The first one is about the movies. The I1 stands for the first Iron Man movie, and the A1 stands for the first Avengers movie. For the second x-axis, it's about years from the past to present. And the audience could read the specific box office of each movie in billions inside those bars. Besides that, I want my audience to learn that there is an increase trending in those movies. Also, the Avenger movies always has a higher box office than the Iron Man movies. I guess it is because there are more superheroes in those movies. Below that, there are 3 donut charts. Those are audience score in percent of 3 Iron Man movies. The audience could read the numbers directly through the numbers. Also, they can compare the percent based on the red donuts. Then, let's jump to the location display. We know that the location displays can be at any scales, and the most important concept here is that location can be relative rather than absolute. For my location display, I linked it with the time display. The highlighted country on this map are going to show where did the above events happen, and I linked them by using the year labels. Lastly, let's talk about the timeline. A basic timeline simply shows when events occurred relatively to each other. It capitalized on the fact that we perceive time as directional. For me, I just did a really basic timeline. My timeline is about the biography of Iron Man in Marvel movies. There are significant events happened in different time period of his life. There are year labels of each time, and there isn't a lot of words in this timeline respected to my visual language model, but the sentence really summarized what's going on at that time. Also, it is associated with a map, which I mentioned before. The map would tell where did those events happen. The orientation of this timeline is from top to bottom, which is people usually do. And also, the map is located right below this timeline, so that the audience could go look for those countries after they reading through this biography. Next, let's talk about the unity and the variety. These two are really important concepts of making an infographic, and interestingly, they are really opposite concepts. For the unity, it stands for repeating use of visual attributes such as color, shape, size, and texture. And if we don't have this kind of unity and repetition in our infographic, the presentation could be really ungrouping and unrelated for our audience. Not only do they feel really unorganized, but also they could not find the important information. For the variety, that makes our visual look more interesting and dynamic, and also it means that use variation in color, texture, size, and the shape extra. And the variety helps the audience to separate things better, and for us, it helps us to make the visual hierarchy better. Next, I'm going to talk about the unity in my infographic. First one, the realistic image in my infographic are all in grayscales. No matter the giant one at the very top or the small ones inside the appearance relationship, they're all in grayscale since I want them to stand out, while other of my elements are all in colorful colors. For the charts, I also group them in colors. For example, the box office are all in purple, and the donut charts of the audience scores are all in red. I did this because that I want my audience to compare them inside and differentiate them outside. The text color of my infographic are all in dark black, since dark black is the most clear color on my two backgrounds. And also I choose purple to all of my line colors, since I wanted all of the lines a little bit lighter than all of the text. And it's interesting to notice that I use a lot of round shapes elements in my infographic, which is similar to what the visual language model did. And lastly, there are a lot of flat iconography. For the variety part, I differentiate my elements by using the size difference. For example, I make the dominant Iron Man image really big comparing to those small ones in the appearance relationship, since I don't want those little images catch too much my audience attention. I also played some varieties in the color. For example, I gave purple to the box office bar chart while I gave red to the audience score. Not only I want to differentiate the two number display, but also I want to make a balance between them, because the box office had more space than the audience score chart did, so that I gave a more eye-catching color to the audience score to try to find a balance between these two displays. Lastly, I choose the realistic photos for all of the character Tony Stark, but for like the icons or the maps, I just give them the graphical displays. After that, we're going to talk about a really important concept, encoding. For encoding, it means that translating information into visual forms through different kinds of ways. For example, you can use color, line treatment, interaction, or positions. For my infographic, I used a lot of encoding techniques in the number display. For example, the bar chart of box office. I use the bars to represent the number of box office for each movie, and also at the top, I put two labels there. I was trying to communicate with my audience that I stands for Iron Man while A stands for Avengers, and I wanted them to understand this while they read the x-axis of this bar chart. And for the donut chart of the audience score, I put the proportion on these red donuts so that I want my audience to understand the percent of the audience score by looking at how much red are on this donut chart. I also use some line treatment as my encodes. For example, at this appearance relationship diagram, I use the lines to represent the evolution. I was trying to tell my audience the evolution orientation from an old version to a new version by using the pointing arrows. I also use strong encoding techniques to connect the timeline and the map together. I use the same year labels for both the timeline and the labels on the map, since I want my audience try to find all those locations on the map by mapping them with the year labels on the time display. I didn't use too much position encoding in my infographic because I have a little bit tight space, but I have too much information that I want to communicate. But I think that would be a very good encoding method. Maybe I can use it next time for my next infographic. Next, we're going to talk about a really important element of making infographic. It is color. We know that color is really useful for making an infographic. Color can be used as highlights, can be used as encoding. It also can play a role as a trigger association. For my infographic, the harmony is really complementary. As I shown here, the main colors I use are red, purple, black, and gray. While choosing a white and a gray for the background color, I use the red for most of my highlighted color because red is really eye-catching at this case. And for the purple, I usually use this as my encoding color. For example, when I use some light treatment as an encoding, or for my bar chart, I always use the purple because it's really easy to differentiate this color with my other color. For the black, it is really used for all of the text, since black is really easy to read and it's very clear to see on these two backgrounds. And for the gray, it's really used for the encoding and also used for the trigger association because I choose a gray color for the map on my infographic. It's not that kind of dominant, but the audience can still see, oh, that is a thing there. So I choose this color for the elements, which I didn't want to emphasize, but I still want my audience to realize and to get the information from. And when I put my infographic and the color model together, it is easy to see that both of them are using the same text color, the title color, the realistic image color, which are all in grayscale, and also the line treatment color. And both of the infographics are based on cold gray tones, while featured with the red and purple. Those are two really bright colors, and this helps me to do a really good job in highlighting and try to balance and contrast the elements I have. And in terms of visual language, this is the tools to tell us what type of lines and shapes, texture or feels, and also how realistic or abstract or how detailed or simplified the graphic elements we're going to use. In a word, the visual language would bring the style of our infographic. Firstly, let's look at the line treatment. For the visual language model, it uses really thin lines in all cases, and for leading lines, it uses a line with a dot at the end point. For the realistic images, the model has a really giant one at the very top, and it is different in style of other elements in this infographic, since we want to catch the audience's attention by using a grayscale color. For the shapes, there are a lot of round shapes on this infographic, including the donut chart. And for the textures and the fills, we can see that the areas are about the same. For like the bar chart, which takes a lot of space, there are a lot of fills at this case, but there are also like some decoration of lines are in the textures. There are a lot of graphical elements besides the giant image, and the graphical elements are in different kinds of forms. They can be very realistic as the NBA icon at the very top. It can also be really graphical as the lines at the very bottom part. And let's jump to my infographic. I think, about the same line treatment as the model did, and I also use those as my leading lines. For the realistic images, I have the giant one at the very top, but I also have some at the very bottom for displaying my appearance relationship. And for the shapes, I do have a lot of shapes as the model did. And for the texture fields, I think I have a balance here, because like for the bar chart and the map, those are really fields elements, but for like there are also a lot of lines and textures in my infographic. For the graphical elements, I didn't have as much as the model did, but I do have those important ones. For example, the big F and also the icons around the big Iron Man image. I also added a map and a relationship diagram, which include a lot of images here to play a role as a balance between the text and the graphical elements. And in terms of typography, which is a guide of all of my font choice, I think this is exactly the same as my typography model, which is also my visual language model. Both the model and I choose to use a Futura. This is a geometric sans serif typeface. This kind of font is really simple, but it's also very clear to read. And another features of this kind of fonts is that it is really different in both Italian and the regular ones, so that I use this kind of fonts for all of the context inside my infographic, but I choose different type of thing. For some minus parts inside the timeline, I choose to use the Italian kind of form, and also they're really in small size, which means that I didn't want to emphasize them. But for the other regular contents, I choose to use the regular Futura. For example, like the title of the map or the numbers inside the audience scores, I choose to use the regular Futura. But for some parts such as the titles or such as the subtitles of different sections, I choose to use the bold Futura, which is really easy to read and it's really eye-catching at this case. In addition, all of the contents in my infographic are capitalized. That's how the model did. Label is another important part of typography. In my infographic, I mixed the use of labels. There are the precision labels, identity labels, and accent labels. For the precision label, it stands for those labels that have precise numerical value represented by a visual element. Look at how I did in this case. I use a bar to represent the number of the box office of that movie, and also I use the wedge in this donut chart to represent the audience scores. And also I use this rectangle box to be the year labels. For the identity label, those are the labels that clarify what our infographic elements represent. For example, here I use an I to represent the Iron Man, and the A stands for Avengers. Lastly, there are axis labels. These are really straightforward. These labels are along one of the axes of a chart that show the scale and the units. Look at, I have two of them. The one is for the donut chart, which shows the 3 Iron Man movies. The other one is a double axis. The first one stands for the movies, and the next one stands for the years of those movies. All of the labels in my infographic also work as the annotation, while I didn't have too much content in my infographic. And also, I am trying my best to associate it with what is a label for. For example, the year label for the map, it is associated with the highlighted country on the map, and also it works well to connect both the timeline and the map. After that, I'm going to talk about my visual hierarchy. This part is really easy to be ignored, but it's really important because the visual hierarchy is going to decide which part your audience is going to pay attention and what information they're going to get from your infographic. The visual hierarchy refers to the variation in visual permanence of elements in a display. And for me, I'm trying to use the size, the layout arrangement, the color, and the typography to do this kind of emphasis and try to balance all of the elements in a better way. Firstly, I bring a giant size to this grayscale Iron Man, and I put this at the top part of the infographic, which take about half of my page. It is really eye-catching, and I really want my audience to look at this image first while they take a look for my infographic. After that, I put a really big box and put Tony Stark, his name inside. That's another thing I want my audience to pay attention to first, since both of the image and the name inside the box would bring the thought to my audience that, oh, this infographic is about Iron Man, Tony Stark. After that, I want them to read from top to bottom and from left to right. The bright background, which is white, would drive their attention to the left first, and they will go to the biography. In addition, the color of the biography, the title is in red, which it can be another thing to increase its visual hierarchy and catch my audience's attention. After read the left part of the biography and the map, the audience would go to the right part. I want my audience to pay attention to the box office, so I give relatively big space to this bar chart, and also I give a lot of color at this point so that it can be really eye-catching and it drives my audience attention here. After that, I want my audience to pay attention to the audience score, although they're in relatively small space, but I put the red color here, which can be another dominant element at this case to let my audience pay attention to. Lastly, I have the appearance relationship. Although they're kind of heavy, because it has the realistic images, but the color is really dull, and also the size is relatively small than other elements. So actually, I don't want this appearance to draw too much attention, while I have a really dominant and giant Iron Man at the very top, so that I give the color to this display and I adjust the size. The next thing I want to talk about is about the layout. Look at here, I have my infographic and the layout model here so that you can see how I emulated from this. I'm going to do some analyze at this point. Firstly, you can see that the layout model divides the whole page to about one half in ratios. For the very top part, there's a giant image of the character and their topic of this infographic featured with some elements about this topic. And for the bottom half, there are two parts. I think it is divided to left and the right part. The left part is more like a group of elements. For example, for my infographic, I have the timeline and also the map. It seems like two groups of elements, but there's a really association here, and I have to put them together to guide my audience to read. And for the right part, it's almost about the number display or relationship diagram. There isn't a lot of text at this point. And three of them are lined in a line from top to bottom. There's box office, the audience score, and also the appearance relationship diagram. There is no specific blocks being divided for all the elements, but there is still like the borderlines for all the contents, and it is really easy to separate those. And the very bottom part of the right side, I have some slash lines here, which is different from the layout model. While the layout model puts the slash line at the top, I changed the location of the slash lines because I want them to be an implication for my audience to say that, hey, this is the end of my infographic, and thanks for watching. And when we're comparing my infographic with the layout model, I would say that I think I have a little bit more information I want to display on this infographic than the model did, so that it is a little bit tight in my work than the model. So I was trying to think a way of solve the problem, and I tried my best to bring more free space. I tried to reduce the words I have. For example, the timeline display, this is the best I can do to have just one sentence of stuff. And also I try to use a lot of graphical elements in this case, and also do a lot of encoding and trying to bring as much information as I can. Lastly, let's talk about alignment. Alignment is a little bit different from the layout. It refers to arranging the graphic elements or the text so that they can line up. Basically, the alignment brings the organization to our infographic. Here is the thing. I'm going to mainly talk about the alignment at the data part, which is at the bottom, since the top half of my infographic is mainly the giant image and the title in a box. I think all of the contents of the text of the graphical elements are all aligned to left, as the red lines on the screen showing. The consistency of the alignment brings the organization and clear to my infographic, and also it tells the audience, oh, this is a group of elements. One thing maybe a little bit apart from the layout model is that the slash line and the labels of the bar chart isn't aligned to left. For the labels of the bar chart, I try to put them at the middle top of the bar chart, since I want to show the association between the label and the bar chart. Since for the model, there are like two separate elements. There's no relationship between the element at the top and the bar chart itself. For the slash lines at the very bottom, since I want to use this as a suggestion of the end, so that I also put that at the middle of the layout. Okay, I think that's all for this summation. I really enjoyed this class. Not only I learned a lot of AI skills at this class, but also I learned how to make an effective infographic to communicate information. Thanks for watching.